We recording? Yep. Kia ora koutou, good morning. Like to open the Infrastructure Committee meeting of the 5th of August. Before I do that, I just run through a couple of points. One is that this meeting has been recorded and it will be on the council website. The other one is there's some health and safety procedures here for the Convention and Function Centre. One is that there is male and female toilets on the ground floor, including disability. The exit signs are highlighted through the door we entered and any other sign above a door. It's a non-smoking facility. There's a first aid kit in the main office and a defibrillator on the ground floor next to the unisex toilet. And the assembly point is outside the exit that we entered into. If you'd like to speak during the meeting, just raise your hand to indicate. And I don't believe we've got any members online for this meeting. And when you speak, if you could just state your name before you ask your question or make your comment. And it's also possible that the response might come through the online means. Before I adjourn this meeting for the community development, I'm just going to take apologies for infrastructure. Councillor Harpiter.
Early departure. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Chair, I have some council business around lunchtime, but I'm just unsure whose committee it might fall into. But
okay,
I will be in and out.
Okay, we'll note that. Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Like the Mayor, I'll be joining him on the council business, so whenever that happens.
Thank you. We'll also note that. No other apologies. I'll move those. Seconded by Councillor Johnson. Put it to a vote. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? That is carried. I'll now adjourn this meeting till the conclusion of community development and pass it to Councillor Johnson. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dennison. I'll just open the Community Development Committee meeting. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga. Kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. E hi ake ana te atukura, e teo, he huka, he hohu, ti he Māori ora. Tēnā koutou katoa, haere mai ki tēnei hui, te iwi o rangatane, tēnā koutou. Nā mihi nui ki a koutou katoa. Welcome everybody to this meeting of Community Development Committee, and I'd just like to add that when it comes to voting, we don't have electronic voting, so we'll do it on voices or hands, or if need be, we'll call for a division. If we can start with apologies, please. Councillor Harpiter.
Early departure, thank you.
Early departure for Councillor Harpiter. Deputy Mayor.
Madam Chair, same as
same as for infrastructure. Mr. Mayor.
Madam Chair, the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other apologies?
Kia ora, I'll be leaving just before 1 if we haven't finished by then.
Thank you, Danielle. So I'd like to move that the apologies be accepted. Seconded, Councillor Bowen. I will do it on the voices. All in favour? Aye. Anyone against? Carried. Now that I've had no additional items, are there any additional items? No. So we'll move on to declarations of interest. I have had some declarations of interest, so I'll give the opportunity for those members to declare them. Councillor Harpiter.
Yes, I'd like to declare an interest in item 14.
Item 14.
Yes,
thank you.
I won't be participating in that item.
Thanks. Councillor Jameson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to declare an interest in item 5, but not, which is the Enable New Zealand, being a DHB board member, but I don't believe there's a conflict. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Beattie.
I'd like to declare an interest in item number 14, the local alcohol policy.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Also declare an interest in item 14.
Thank you. Councillor Finlay. Councillor, do you have your microphone on? The advice I've had from governance is that we don't need to have any declarations of interest for small grants fund because the money's already been, the decision's been made and the money's been allocated. We're just noting the report.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Councillor Hancock.
Just to declare an interest in item 14. I was actually submitted during the process. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you. So all of those declarations of interest are noted. We'll move on to public comment. So is there any, I haven't been advised that anyone wants to make any public comment, but is there any public comments? Nope. Okay. So we will move on then to the first deputation, which is from Enable New Zealand. Now, it was to be presented by Andrea Crutchley, but she's lost her voice. So instead, we've got able deputies, Erin Allen and Raywin Cameron. So would you like to take a seat? Welcome. You will need to use the microphone. I think you'll probably need to turn it on when you speak. Carly, are we using the timing lights? Yeah. So you'll have 10 minutes for your presentation and then there may be questions. And we use the traffic light system just to your right. So green for the first 7 minutes, amber for minutes 7 to 9, and red for the last minute. And then a buzzer will go. And when the buzzer goes, if you just finish off where you're at, if you're not finished by then, and then maybe questions from elected members. So when you're ready, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Erin Allen, and I'm the Communications Officer at Enable New Zealand. I'm filling in.
Sorry, Erin, we're just struggling to hear you. I don't know if the tech team can just check the microphone. Just hold it quite close to your mouth. Yep.
Is that any better?
Yes, thank
you. Yes, so good morning. My name is Erin Allen. I'm the Communications Officer at Enable New Zealand, and I'm filling in for Andrea today. Raywin Cameron is with us as well. I'm the manager for the Tari team of Mana Whaikaha, part of Enable. So we're going to be presenting today about Enable New Zealand. I know some of you are already quite familiar with the organization, but for those of you that are not, we're going to be giving just an overview of what we do, our different brands, and as well going to be sharing about a recent initiative launched last month in our Easy Living store, which is a sensory space. So I'll just start off. Got the clicker working. There we go. Yes, so Enable New Zealand is New Zealand's largest supplier of disability equipment, information and modification services. So our mission is to support disabled people and their whānau to live everyday lives in their communities. And we do that in a number of different ways. So we employ over 110 staff across New Zealand. We are headquartered in Palmerston North, but we have offices in Hamilton and Christchurch as well. We manage over $150 million of funding each year, and we have national contracts with the Ministry of Health and ACC and multiple local contracts as well, which I'll talk about. We purchase over 85,000 pieces of equipment each year at value of over 21 million. We are owned by Mid-Central DHB. However, we're an independent operating division. We are not for profit. Our profits go back into further developments for the people that we serve and new initiatives like the one we're going to be talking about a little bit later. Yes, so these are our major contracts here. With the Ministry of Health, we have the contract for equipment and modification services that is national south of the Bombay Hills. We deliver that. We also have the national contract for the Children's Spectacle Subsidy, the Hearing Aid Subsidy and Hearing Aid Scheme. And for the Mid-Central region, we are also helping facilitate the Mana Whaikaha Disability Support System prototype. We also hold the contract for the Disability Information Advisory Service, and we deliver that through our First Port website, as well as through our local Easy Living store, which serves as a disability information center. And we also provide outreach services. We have the ACC contract for housing modifications south of the Bombay Hills. And with DHBs, we offer a variety of services, including an equipment hire service and a short-term loan service for equipment that supports various DHBs throughout the country. And we also have a retail store in Palmerston North on Main Street. And we also run an online store based on the Shopify platform. As I've mentioned, multiple of these contracts do have national delivery. For the Children's Spectacle Subsidy and the Hearing Aid Subsidy, that's national. For multiple others, it's south of the Bombay Hills. And for Manawhakaha, it is within the Mid-Central region. For the equipment hire service, that's within the Canterbury region. We also run a palliative care hire service out of our Christchurch warehouse. Now we have a video that overviews what we do, and we'll see if this wants to go.
Enable New Zealand is the nation's largest provider of disability equipment and modification services. Part of the Mid-Central District Health Board, each year we manage over $150 million of funds on behalf of the Ministry of Health and ACC. We manage and issue more than 90,000 pieces of disability equipment, and more than 75,000 people receive our services. We provide disability equipment to customers south of the Bombay Hills on behalf of the Ministry of Health. We also run a dedicated palliative care service for the Christchurch District Health Board, providing equipment to customers so they can be with their loved ones in their homes over their final days. We deliver housing and vehicle modification services to customers south of the Bombay Hills on behalf of the Ministry of Health and ACC. We facilitate the Ministry of Health's Children's Spectacle Subsidy, available to children nationwide aged 15 and under from low-income homes. We manage the funding applications for hearing aids and hearing devices nationwide on behalf of the Ministry of Health. We offer a short-term loan service for the Southland, Nelson and Mid-Central DHBs, enabling them to get disability equipment to customers quickly and easily. And we provide disability information to our customers through a range of channels, including our First Port website and Easy Living Centre and retail store in Palmerston North. We have more than 120 staff across 4 sites, our head office in Palmerston North and warehouses in Palmerston North, Christchurch and Hamilton. We also provide wheelchair, postural and modification outreach services in other parts of the country. To find out more about us and our services, visit enable.co.nz or find us on Facebook.
Manawhakaha is the service that provides support for disabled people in the DHB area. In 2018, we launched Manawhakaha, which is based on the Enabling Good Lives in our area. And it's a prototype, which means we do the try, learn and adjust model. And Enable New Zealand provides the background for the support system. And I work in the Tari team, which support that go out and meet with all the families. Part of the new system was to have more people out in the community. So part of that, we have 4 government liaisons that liaise with the government in the government sector with, you know, the ACC, the Ministry of Social Development, Arama Tamariki, and that provides a smoother service for our disabled people. We have information specialists that provide information for the whole of New Zealand because we have that national contract, and people can ring in, they can text, they can email, or they can phone. So we provide that in different platforms. We have our funding specialists, which provide the funding mechanism and for the disabled people and make sure that the funding is given to them to make their own choices and spend how they choose to. Currently, we have over 700 people engaged with connectors, and the connectors go out into the community to meet with the families and have a discussion around what a good life looks like to them, and then they put their plan together. When we started Mana Whakaha in 2018, we had around 1,600 disabled people that we provided services for, and we now have close to 2,000. The prototype was for 2 years, which ended in June this year. And due to COVID, we got an extra 3 months. And now we have a 3rd year, and which ends in June 2021. And we really needed that 3rd year to get the prototype in place. Yeah, thank you.
I'm just going to quickly talk about our First Port website, because I do want to rush through and get to sharing about the new sensory space in Palmerston North. So our First Port website is a national website that gives disability information. So it's particularly focused on national funding information, and that's something that it provides. We welcomed over 50,000 visitors in 2019. People are particularly looking for the information around financial support, government funding, disability allowances and benefits. It's also a website that helps inform and connect people to local resources. So we do that website. One of the other main areas of traffic is pointing people to local disability information centers. So we work with the Federation around that to point people to that. And we've done various different initiatives over the last couple of years to share people's stories, the stories of people living with disability in New Zealand, various videos and different types of things like that. So it's a great website.
As Erin said, we have our Easy Living store on Main Street, and the Easy Living store is our information centre, but we also have a unique retail demonstration space. So one half of the store is a demonstration centre, which has a kitchen, a bedroom, bathroom with all the different pieces of equipment that make life easy in your own home. We have professional advisors. If you need some advice, you can make a time, come into the shop and get some professional advice. We have an online retail store, but we also have a mobile van that goes out on the whole of the DHB area, as well as over to Masterton, that area, because they don't have a store or anything like that. And she's kept really busy over there as part of that service. But the main reason that we were coming today is to talk about our sensory space, which opened as part of the Easy Living Centre. And we got the support of the Parent to Parent, Altogether Autism, Autism New Zealand and Mana Whakaha to open the sensory space, which really started out for our ASD clients. But now it is fully accessible to anyone, whether you have a disability or not. We are here today because we'd like to ask the council to help us champion an additional space in Palmerston North, because there is a big need for this. And the space we're looking at is at Te Manawa, and we have a gentleman coming from Te Manawa next week to look at the space we already have. Why we're doing this is that we have quite a small space and we're open only 5 days a week, where Te Manawa could provide a bigger space and they're open 7 days a week and more time. At present, we have 1 hour sessions for families or people that they can book, and then we have a space to clean. So we don't, we can only fit so many people in, where Te Manawa could have the bigger space.
Raewyn, sorry to interrupt. If you could just finish up, and there may be options for talking more about it with questions.
Just like to say that since we've opened, it's been fully booked, and we've had a 200% increase on our website traffic and Facebook, and we can't keep up with the demand for the sensory space. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Erin and Raewyn. Are there any questions, elected members? Councillor Dennison.
With the Te Manawa you mentioned quite specifically, have you done a scoping of some possible options around the city to identify Te Manawa as being the most preferred? How did Te Manawa come about as being the location?
Because we're filling in for Andrea, I'm not sure of the answer of that question. I just know that she's been in discussions with them, and they're coming to have a look at what we provide next week. I just think Andrea wanted to get it off the ground, so maybe that's the only one, but I can let people know.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Finlay.
Yeah, I actually know what the sensory space is all about, but a lot of people won't actually understand what it is and what sort of clients you're looking at. So could you be a bit more expansive about the people that go there and the people it's designed for, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So the sensory space is designed, as Raywin mentioned, it is designed specifically with children or adults with autism spectrum disorder in mind. It is a space that is a safe and protected space for engaging and soothing the senses. So there are multiple items in the room. There's there's weighted blankets. There's tactile interactive elements, a soothing bubble tower, different things like that that can just engage and soothe the senses for those that have autism, but it is also a space that's open for others as well. Is there anything that you'd add to that?
No, yeah, it's there are some people with disabilities can only like to touch certain things, and there's other certain things they don't like to touch, and so this gives them the chance to experience that other stuff, other tactile stuff in a safe environment. Yeah, but there's all sorts of rough, there's crunchy, there's running water, and there's big weighted blankets. So yeah, it's a sensory environment for all your 5 senses. Yeah.
It also gives people an opportunity to test out different products that might be useful for them. But again, before purchasing those, as some are quite an investment, being able to see how their child interacts with them. It's a great opportunity for that as well.
Councillor Harper.
I might have missed it, but has a discussion been had with Te Manawa?
I believe that a lot of the impetus behind this dedicated space, there are different spaces in town that do offer sensory sessions, but as of yet, there has been no dedicated space. So I know for Andrea, working with a lot of these other organizations, her desire and her drive behind it was to test the community demand and to see what the response would be in the community. And I know that she's had discussions with different organizations around and a lot of community that have seen and had a desire for the space. So I think that Te Manawa has been mentioned by community that would see that as a really great space for it. And we do have someone coming from Te Manawa to visit the space next week. So I'd assume there would have been a discussion before booking that in.
That seems to be the end of questions. So thank you. So if you so I would like to move a recommendation that Community Development Committee receive the presentation for information, seconded, and I'll open it up for any comment. Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you both for coming in to speak to that and for the invitation that's been extended. I know the Mayor attended the opening of the sensory space. I've been for a visit, I think others have as well. It's certainly a really great facility that we're offering in our community, and good to see the problems of success, that they are oversubscribed. The space is actually quite small, and that has its own limits as well with the current COVID cleaning requirements, which is limiting how many people can go through that space. I'm aware from discussions with the team at the Easy Living Centre that there have been conversations around the community around finding a suitable venue, for example, discussions with our library amongst others. Certainly there's no decision about where that might be yet. It's still at that very early stage, just to put anybody's mind at rest thinking that decision had been made. But thank you for coming and speaking to us and sharing the very exciting work that you're doing. Thanks.
And no further comment? We'll put that to the vote then. So all in favour say aye. Anyone against? Carried. So item 6 is a deputation from English Language Partners. And I'd like to invite Helen van den Ende to come and present, please. Well, welcome, Helen. You would have seen how it works.
Yes.
So just start when you're ready. Thank you.
Okay, so this morning, it's really just kind of an information session about English Language Partners, and just I'll talk about who we are as a national body and what we do in Palmerston North. Oh, hang on. Oh, we're on this one. Okay, I'll just have to look this way. Okay, so English Language Partners. Like all good organisations, we have vision, purpose and values. So our vision is that we work with former refugees and migrants to participate successfully in all aspects of life in Aotearoa, New Zealand. We have a purpose, which is good, to deliver English language programs and enable an effective settlement. And running through all of that are our values through all our teaching programs of partnership, excellence, diversity and respect. Okay, so quick stats. So this is our national body. 2018-19, we dealt with 7,200 refugee migrant background adult learners. So we only deal with adults and we work with adults. We're a non-profit registered charity. We have 1,800 volunteers, 350 staff, 40 years of expertise. It started way back as the, I forget the name, home tutors. There was a volunteer home tutors. We are community based, so while we have offices, many of our centres just work out of community centres, homes and workplaces. Most of our funding comes through Tertiary Education Commission. We have contracts and local funders. Okay, so this is where we are in New Zealand. So you can see all from Whangarei all the way down to Invercargill. And obviously Palmerston is here. So in our centres, the people that we deal with really depend on the local population. So in Palmerston North, we have a large refugee community. So they are, you know, the bulk of our clients. Other centres like Wellington, Auckland will have a lot more higher skilled migrants. Places like Tauranga, for example, would have seasonal workers. So it really just depends on, you know, who's around. Okay, so we talked about our purpose, deliver language programs, enable effective settlement so that our learners can live confident and independent lives, participate in New Zealand society and access mainstream services. Meet people, make connections and not be isolated. We see for our refugee communities, isolation is a huge thing, a huge problem. Get the language to get a job and further study. Know how to care for the New Zealand environment, understand rights and responsibilities in bicultural and multicultural New Zealand. And importantly, retain and share their own cultural identity. It's quite a lot, really. Okay, so in Palmerston North, we're based at 120 King Street. So just moving now what we actually do in the city. So this year, May 2020, we've provided service to 250 people in the city. Last year, over 1,000 services to 350 people. And by a service, we mean they attend a block of classes. Okay, so the majority of our learners are pre-literate. and very few above intermediate. So what we mean by pre-literate is that a lot of our refugee learners have not had the opportunity to go to school. A large proportion of them can't read and write in their own language. So, you know, coming to New Zealand and learning to read and write in English, you can imagine, is a huge challenge. And our clients range from 16 to over 70. So we've got everybody. Just a little bit on our ethnicities. Actually, I've got a, oh look, I've got a thing here. So, I don't know, can you see that? With our, probably 2/3 of our learners are from the refugee background, and we kind of have smatterings of from everywhere, mostly Asia, admittedly, a few, and here we've got a couple from Samoa, which is something as an organisation we know, and we are working really hard, that we are not working very well with the Pacifica community, and it's something that we're really focusing on because we know, and they tell us, that there is a need. So hopefully next time we come, that Pacifica group will be much larger. All right, so how do we do this? We've got staff of 1 full-time manager, 3 part-time admin, 6 part-time teachers, and 60 volunteers approximately in our home tutor program. We are funded primarily through tertiary education contracts and local ACE funding. So all of our courses for permanent residents and New Zealand citizens are free. They get funded through this. And just a little bit of, the last NZQA external evaluation review, English language partners received category 1 excellence, which is top marks for our program. So we're quite proud of that. So our focus in Palmerston North is helping our migrants integrate effectively into the community. We don't have an academic goals. We don't do certificates. We don't do, you know, NZSL. We do have another organisation in town which we, you know, people can go through to there. So when we talk about that, we teach English, but we also teach about living in Palmerston North, you know. And yeah, so we also provide ongoing support to our migrants who are looking for employment and also those who are in work. So we run courses for those who are working and still need to practice their English. So, and we network with, I've just got a few there, many agencies around town. We've got PNCC, Manawatu Multicultural Centre, Red Cross, Police, Sport Manawatu, Diabetes, just basically whoever, a lot of our agencies and social services, and also a member of the Welcoming Communities Advisory Group. Okay, so I've talked, so these are the programs that, okay, so one at a time, that we deliver in Palmerston North, which is actually quite a good range. So we run the language groups. They kind of run in 16-hour blocks, and we can pretty much teach anything under those. We've got regular term time ones for daytime ones. We can run them on a topic. Our home tutor program is huge. So one of our staff, her job is full part-time job, is just looking after the home tutors. So the people that we visit tend to be mums with babies that can't get out of the house, older people, pretty much anybody who can't come into a class to access English language. English for Employees, that's our program for people in work. So that's a part-time course, depends 2 to 4 hours a week for 45 hours. So looking at workplace English and all the issues in language that goes around a job, health and safety, you know, all those sorts of things. We teach road code course, helping our people to get their learner license. Work Talk, which is a job seeking program, you know, CV writing, interview skills, telephone skills. ESOL literacy classes. So I, apart from this job, teach, that's one of my classes. So that's for our mostly refugee learners. I think the criteria is less than 6 years of primary education to be eligible for that class. And the ESOL intensive is kind of the next class up from there. We're also a provider for the prepaid tuition program. So, you know, when migrants come to New Zealand as part of their residency, if the English level isn't good enough, they prepay their English lessons, and we're a registered provider for that. And we run, for our tutors, there we provide certificates in ESOL home tutoring. And there is also the option for businesses and individuals to contract us on a private basis. Oh, nearly there. Okay, issues quickly. Strangely enough, COVID. So as an organisation, we're a little bit concerned with the borders closed because one of our major sources of income is refugees, and nobody really quite knows when it's going to open up again. So 2021 beyond, we're not sure. So it's a real push to actually develop our programs for the people that are here. So we've lockdown was good, but it also, you know, as a organisation, we learned a lot of new tricks and are running nationally run online classes. So people from Invercargill to Whangarei can zoom into a online class, and just, yeah, developing courses and targeting employers. Which brings us to funding. And just one of the issues, the problems that we find is we are funded for permanent residents and citizens, but we get a lot of inquiries from people who are on work visas and employers who have people on work visas who would like English programs for them, and we have to turn them down because, you know, we can't fund them. So I don't know how we get around this. I mean, we've got a few, like, you know, work organisations applying for funding to contract us, which is a little bit dicey sometimes, you know, because the funding pool is limited. So I don't know, an idea is whether, you know, there is support for employers from council, from government, from whoever really, to help fund English language lessons. Because, you know, the evidence is overwhelming that as for an organisation with a lot of migrants, as the English level improves, your economic outcomes improve. But employers obviously things are tight and don't always understand. And the last one, which is a very practical thing, is that we are looking for new premises, 250, 300 metres square, earthquake rating of 75%, consented for education, and doesn't cost us very much. So, which is a very, you know, we've had a few things, but it's fallen down on one or two of those criteria. So if anybody's got any, knows of anywhere or any great ideas, give us a call.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Helen, for that. Very well done. Elected members, any questions? Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Helen, for your presentation. You're talking about the funding issue there. What's your relationship like with Immigration New Zealand?
Fortunately, Jess couldn't come this morning. She'd probably better. As an organisation, I'm not sure. We just work. So our national office in Wellington will probably answer that question. I'm pretty sure they do work in. So I'm not sure. I better stop. I'm not sure.
No, that's fine. I'm
yeah.
probably. I'd just say some of the stuff, and I'm sorry, I'm probably going into a bit of comment, but some of the stuff you're talking about really is an Immigration New Zealand around work visas. I get a lot of that as well as the mayor. People coming to me, so I share your concerns, and it just doesn't seem to be something that's been dealt with.
No, you know, I think people feel, you know, they, especially on the skilled migrants, or, you know, within our dairy farm industry, you know, these people are valuable and needed, they, please come, please come, please come. But while they're here, it's like, okay.
Well, for Palmerston North, it's actually probably
Mr. Mass.
produce as well.
Thank you. We can save that for comment. Councillor Dingwall.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for your deputation. I noticed that you talked about the Pacifica community and what you're doing, particularly with the Samoans. How are you engaging with the Pacifica community at the moment? You say that that there is a need there.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
Okay, so really over the last year, we have been slowly just networking, introducing, we've been told by more than one person from within the organisation without that, we need to build that trust, and, that doesn't happen overnight. Basically talking to them, networking, informing them of the programs, word of mouth.
Mm. And have you connected with the PNCC Pacifica Community Liaison Coordinator?
So beforehand, I was working with Ria, and I'm meeting with Lucky Friday. Just to, COVID's kind of thrown a few spinners in the work with meetings and things. So,
okay, yes.
Yeah. And also there are various other people around town. We're just trying to connect into the.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Rutherford.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Helen, for your presentation. That was really, really informative. I have got two questions around the support that you can offer to businesses. Have you had any involvement with CEDA or the Chamber of Commerce at a local level to be able to promote that? Because that was something I wasn't aware that you did.
Yes. We've been trying to work. I think CEDA works a lot more with the skilled migrant. I mean, this is my impression, maybe it's wrong. They work a lot at the skilled migrant level, and the people that we work at that lower level. But yes, it's still, I work 10 hours at this job, so things take time. But yeah, we have had contact with them, and I think when Linda came into the job, I had a quick chat with her, but it might be time to come back to that.
Yeah, so how's that experience been in terms of trying to get a bit of raising the awareness, I guess, of the services that you can offer local employers? Is that well received? Is there engagement?
Yes and no. It depends on the employer. With some of them, great idea. But also getting them to encourage, we're just going through with one employer at the moment, and he thinks it's fantastic, but actually getting the people, his staff, to believe that it's a good idea for them is, it's been a challenge. Some guys we don't need it. I can communicate. It's all over the place.
Okay, thank you for that.
Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Hafter.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, Helen. As an employer of a Filipino chef who failed the IELTS test 4 times to get his visa, how do you encourage a person to carry on doing more training to get the English right? Because it's still not right in a kitchen.
I guess as wanting IELTS, he's on a work visa.
Mm.
Just get out there. Failing that, there's a whole lot of resources online. It really just depends on the motivation of the person. And a lot of people get to a point where they can get by, that they can do their job. And for our really low levels, I'm blown away by how they communicate with their bosses. It's texting, and then, the boss will text them the information and somebody will read that and translate it for them. It works, but it really just depends on the individual's motivation. And some of them do get into this kind of comfort zone of, they can do what they need to do to get a job, but they really can't, it's really hard for them to sort of go that next step or see the need to go that next step, because it is hard learning another language.
Is that it, Councillor Harberton? Yep. Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. 2 questions. Thank you, Helen, for the presentation. I certainly learned a lot. And a couple questions that arise for me. The first one's just you talked about hunting for premises. Would that potentially see you leaving the city centre?
We do need to stay within the city centre because a lot of most of our people come in by bus, so we can't, I mean, yeah, it'd be nice to go out to the suburbs because it's cheaper, but it needs to be accessible. So we are kind of limited, kind of within a reasonable walking distance of town.
Great.
Square.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that.
The other option is, as they do in other centres, is that we have an office downtown and our classrooms are spread around, which is, it works, but it's, it's better to be all in together, I think.
Yeah, thanks. The other question was just around how well that strongly volunteer model is working. I was really surprised by the ratio of staff to volunteers, especially given that you have at least some central government funding. If more funding was secured, would that be to just expand that same sort of ratio and model, or would you actually be looking to bring more of that currently volunteer delivery into a more paid capacity?
We need more volunteers. We've got, there's a lot of people there that we just haven't got people to send to them. Our volunteers are awesome. They, during COVID too, they were going and they were ringing, and they build really strong relationships with people. And I have a volunteer come into my class that also home tutors, for example, and she tells me that she thinks she is the only Kiwi that she has contact with in Palmerston North, because culturally, she doesn't go out. She's got little kids at home. She doesn't go out by herself. So the only other people that she talks to are people from within her community. So it's a really important link for especially these people stuck at home.
Thanks. So that I'm clear on that, then any additional funding would be actually expanding reach rather than bringing existing people on to paid employment.
Just ask a question again.
So you said that, funding is a limitation. You're concerned about funding. I guess what I was interested in is if you acquired additional funding, would that be expanding the reach, like so that new volunteers, et cetera, could be involved, or would it be taking the existing volunteer base and moving them on to paid employment?
So the teachers, so we're paid teachers, so our volunteers, funding, so we could move to new premises. Like I say, it is a really tight budget, like every other charity in the city, we don't have enough money. Expanding programs, we could probably do with another teacher at the moment.
Okay, cool, thank you.
And just, loosening things up a little bit.
Yeah. Thanks, Helen. Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay, well, thank you very much, Helen, for your presentation.
So just going to say, I've got a little folder thing here. All of our information is on our website, and this is just a little blurb sheet. If anybody wants to look at it, I shall leave it here.
Give it to Carly. Yeah, thank you. So I'd like to move that we receive the deputation for information, seconded Councillor Bowen, and I'll open up for any comments now. Councillor Finlay.
I was interested to hear the comment about the dairy farmers. It's something I've been involved with quite a lot in the last year or so. A lot of Filipino dairy farmers come out here to New Zealand on a 3-year visa. And at the end of that 3 years, no extension, they have to go. The amazing thing is when they arrive back at the Philippines, basically as the aeroplane lands, and organisations from Canada and Australia are there to interview them for full-time jobs and full-time residency in both Canada and Australia once they've done the 3 years in New Zealand. So the stupid thing is we train up these top quality dairy farmers for Canada and Australia, but they can't stay in New Zealand. I just wanted to make that comment.
Thank you, Councillor. The Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll now get into the comment. Sorry about before. Look, I just want to acknowledge and thank English language partners. You keep in touch well with the city. I regularly get your newsletters and materials. So thank you. Look, it is a competitive area, and we have a number of providers, and it's great to have a reasonable sized English language partners office in our city. I think the issue around what Councillor Finlay was talking about and Helen alluded to around being able, with the work visas, and being able to give more support to those people is really an Immigration New Zealand issue. It gets swept under the carpet, starts to become employers and city issues, but really it is clearly a government and Immigration New Zealand issue. So they do need to step up. Skills and labour are really, really important to the city, and it is going to be one of our biggest economic risks as we enter this next infrastructure phase that we're going through. I'm sure that it could be, we could ask the candidates in the upcoming election what they think about this issue, but it really does need to be highlighted. It has been swept under the carpet for some time, and I think it does need to be highlighted. But look, thanks again, Helen and the team at ELP. You do a great job, and the city's very supportive of the work you do. Thank you.
Any further comment? Okay, we will put this to the vote. All in favour say aye. Anyone against? Carried. Next is item 7, which is confirmation of the minutes for the meeting of the 1st of July. Are there any matters arising? No. Well, I will move that the minutes be accepted as a true and correct record. Seconded, Councillor Bowen. Any comment? No. Then we'll vote. All in favour say aye. Aye. Anyone against? Oh, sorry. Any abstentions? 2 abstentions. Do you need your names recorded? No. Okay. Carried. Thank you. Item 8 is the COVID-19 Relief Fund guidelines, and that's going to be presented by Joanne Ransom, Community Development Manager. Welcome, Joanne.
Good morning. This report outlines the thinking process taken as we developed the draft guidelines brought to you today for administering the one-off $200,000 COVID-19 relief fund. There is uncertainty as to how COVID will pan out in the months ahead, and we need only to look to Victoria to see how quickly life can change. This report, it outlines the assumptions that we base this report on, specifically that the fund is to address the COVID-19 impact on community organisations through an increase in demand for their services or a loss of income, increase in costs. We believe this fund was intended to be a rapid response fund, addressing need, and we want to confirm the intended breadth of eligibility. The definition of community groups, as outlined in the community funding policy, means that groups from any sector are eligible: arts, sports, environmental and social. We have been in regular contact with community groups, and at this point there is no indication of chronic need. There have also been a large number of grant schemes and significant government funding made available to community groups in recent months, including a $36 million capacity and resilience fund announced on the weekend. The bulk of the paper is a discussion of various options that we considered in coming to the recommended guidelines. I want to acknowledge the Strategy and Planning Department who worked extensively with us on preparing these guidelines. I do have some additional information that came to hand after the report was submitted. So clause 4.4, the cons section of a third party making the decision. The Community Services Council have indicated that they will be looking at $15,000 to $18,000 if they were asked to administer the fund. I'm very happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Joanne, and thank you, Julie McDonald, for also being involved in the putting together of this report. So I'll open up for questions. First, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Joe. Look, the Tiawa Community Foundation, who are part of the New Zealand Community Foundations nationwide, a lot of these foundations have actually been carrying out this work on behalf of cities and communities around New Zealand. Is it worth having them involved in some way? Is it a bit of independence on sort of a panel?
It's certainly an option. We didn't consider it, until now, because we felt that it was our local community and we had very deep relationships with the local community, with different groups in the community. So we brought a lot of local knowledge to that. So no, we hadn't considered the Tiawa Foundation.
I know, Madam Chair, if I can, I know through my office they have, and the CE's office, they have approached council. It obviously hasn't filtered down to your level, but it is an offer that they have put to the city to assist.
Could I just clarify? Do you mean to be contracted to do that work?
Well, be part of helping administrate and identify where. I mean, this is what they do for a job.
I think the office has answered the question, Mr. Mayor. Did you have another one?
No, that's cool. Thank you.
Councillor Finlay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With the COGS payout last week to community groups who were affected by COVID, will the groups that received the money from COGS still be able to apply to the City Council for relief, as they already have had relief from COGS?
Absolutely. So this fund, we've tried to keep it very broad, and we've tried to make it remove hurdles, and it's about need. So it's not for business as usual costs. So it's about really, it's almost an emergency fund to keep organisations operating.
And just to add to that, the intention of the guidelines here is for there to be funding for additional and lost, revenue. So I think sometimes the term double dipping is used wrongly to mean an application for the same thing twice. Obviously, the same thing wouldn't be funded twice, but many groups will be applying for the same costs to different funders because they won't be receiving all that funding from any one funder.
Councillor Dennison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My query is just around the funding opportunity being available up to 4 times a year. I just thought that was quite high, and by the time we get this passed, it's only 10 months left of the financial year. I'm just wondering why 4 was chosen and not 2.
Could have been 3 or it could have been 5.
Yeah, sure. It seems quite high though.
Yeah, so it's a maximum. It was really about not wanting to overfund groups, because we're all expecting increased demand. We're not quite seeing it yet. That's not to say it's not going to be there in a month's time, and it might well be that in a month's time a group comes and applies for some funding, and then the wheels fall off completely and they're inundated with demand for their services, and so that demand is very real and it's still there. So we wanted to provide an opportunity for them to be able to come back and say, look, we underestimated, we need some more help. So really going back to that relief fund,
okay,
and matching need.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. 2 questions, please. First, noting in your assumptions paragraphs, comments around we're making this about organisations have been impacted for extraordinary circumstances. How do we think this is going to pitch? Like what would extraordinary circumstances look like?
The lockdown itself was an extraordinary circumstance, and we know that there were some groups who had to scramble to be able to operate online. So they incurred costs that they would not normally have incurred due to that extraordinary circumstance. And again, we're operating in an unknown future. So we wanted to cast a very wide net so that we can react to what presents itself.
So we're deliberately keeping that quite open so that people can make their case. Okay, thank you. And then I noted, Joanne, in your comments that you said in your engagement with the community so far, you're not seeing a chronic need. So I just wondered what happens to the fund if it is undersubscribed in that very unlikely event that it's undersubscribed.
It won't be spent. It'll remain in the council's accounts.
Thank you.
Councillor Finlay. Oh, sorry. Councillor Dingwall.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Joan, for this report. With your comments around the possibility of PNCSC administering the fund at a cost of between 15,000 and 18,000, would that be more cost effective than our own team administering the fund?
No, I don't believe so. We're used to administering funds, and so we know how to do it, and we're all on site. And because the fund's open all the time, we can very quickly meet that 5-day turnaround. And also, if we get a lot of applications, we can beef up the team, within 2 minutes, basically. And we've also got other people around council who have assisted before in assessing grant applications. So we anticipate that we'll be able to manage it just with a very small team. But if we did need to scale up, then we could do that very quickly. And there wouldn't be any additional cost. You're paying our wages already.
Sorry, so to follow up on that then, what would be the benefit of PNCSC administering this fund if that was a suggestion that was brought forward?
So some of our funds are administered by other groups. For instance, the small grants fund is administered by a third party. So that's something which is an option for councillors to consider. It was one of the options.
Okay, and so sorry, and so the benefit of council, outsourcing again, I guess the small grants fund. How was this different to the small grants fund in terms of what is the benefit of PNCSC doing that if there was a benefit, just like the small grants fund?
So PNCSC, they don't have the capacity at the moment. So if they were to do this, they would need to increase. That's why there's a cost here. They can't just kind of absorb this work, whereas council can absorb it. So I'm not sure that there's a very clear benefit. And given that the fund's a fixed amount, there would be a cost. We'd have to reduce that fund.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
thank you. Just to add to that, the administration of the funds that Community Services Council does administer on behalf of the council, which is a very long established model in Palmerston North and I think sort of nationally leading actually, is because of the close community relationships and the knowledge of the community sector. I think in this instance, the recommendation reflects the increased administrative load and the need to absorb that somehow. And I guess the advice is that would be more effectively done in-house. But it's obviously one of the things for you to consider.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Hopton, were you in line for a question? Go ahead.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, Joe and Julie. Just a question. Most funds don't let you apply for wages, so you are deliberately letting people apply for wages?
Yes, because most funds don't let you apply for wages. And if organisations do need to scale up to meet the need, then that would, we consider that would be a valid expense.
Yeah, no, it's very good. Thank you.
Councillor Butt.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Joanne and Julie. In the next steps, page 22, first bullet point, you said you will develop an online application form and then share it or advertise it to the community groups. will that be an open advertisement for any community group or only for the groups that are already in your database?
So our recommendation is that we follow the definition of community groups as contained in the Community Funding Policy 2018. So that's any community group. And we will make this available to any community group in the city. So it's definitely not just the groups who currently receive funding. It's any and all groups across a very wide, the very widest interpretation of community groups.
Right, thank you. Madam Chair.
Any further questions? Okay, thanks, John and Julie. So I'm happy to move that the draft guideline as appended in the report be approved, and also that second recommendation that if as a result of implementing the fund there's a need to make significant changes to the guidelines, this will be brought back to council for approval. Seconded Councillor Bowen, and I'm opening that up for comment now. Councillor Dingwall.
I'm happy with most of the recommendations in this draft guidelines, but on 4.3, I don't actually support the uncapped funding. I feel that 200,000 is not a lot of money when it comes to the sheer amount of community groups in this area, and I know we've heard that they haven't seen so much need yet, but I do wonder if it's still a bit early to tell because a lot of those funding rounds, haven't ended, haven't started for the next batch. I don't want to see this 200,000 disappear on a few of the larger organisations who have staff members or departments that are actually dedicated to writing funding applications. I feel like those organisations often have larger reserves to draw from, and they often have more opportunities to access outside external funding. And if larger organisations find themselves in a situation where they need PNCC to help keep them afloat, then probably this amount of money won't actually help them anyway. And so I would prefer that we actually do cap it at I would be in favour of capping it at the 5,000 mark. And if it's because 4.2 also says that organisations can make those multiple applications throughout the year. So if they come to us saying they need 5,000 and then it's exhausted, they can always apply the next time and the next time and the 4 times a year. And that will help, I think, keep them going. It gives the managers and boards of smaller organisations a chance to assess the situation as it develops and only apply for what is needed. So I feel like in this situation, we need to share the love a bit more.
So if that's your intention, Councillor, you can put an additional recommendation up to the administrator, if you wish. Any other comment? Danielle.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the report, John.
Is your microphone?
Yeah, that's fine. Can you hear me? Yes. I'd just like to commend the council for taking this action. As we know, it is very tough out there in the community, and there are always limited options out there for funding. So it's great to see the leadership of the City Council in this regard as part of the COVID-19 response.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I won't put up a recommendation, but I just want to enable the officers to talk to Te Awa Foundation to see what value they can add and independence they can add as well, because we're getting a lot of questions about what the fund should be. We've just got to be careful we don't get too politically involved in it because we're all connected to the community in different ways. That's why we get the officers, but it would be quite good to have another set of eyes that does this all around New Zealand. And Te Awa Community Foundation, we want them to grow to be another CET, another Eastern Central Community Trust for us. So having them involved with us in a small way with this relief fund, I think would be quite valuable for all parties. So I won't put a motion up, but I'll just let the officers have a chat. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Naylor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Am I on?
We can't hear you very well.
No, my button's on. Can you hear me now?
Only just. I don't know if we need
I'll
a
speak
roving
up.
mic. Oh, yep.
Thank you. I'm also very supportive of what's in front of us and think it's very, responsive way to us to being able to address the needs in our community. However, I do support the comments that Councillor Dingwall has made around having a cap of perhaps up to 5,000, and would be happy to second an amendment or whatever form to change that in its entirety, but with that limitation, just to ensure that the fund does last long enough to meet the needs of the community in the for the full year.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I wanted to comment on the format of this report and express my thanks to the officers for the way they took us through their thought processes in this, as it's a unique piece of work. It's not a situation we found ourselves in. I did actually find that really helpful to be walked through the process of what the options were and what the officers felt were the pros and cons. But obviously, as the officers have said, where they've landed is their recommendation. It's over to us to make that decision. And I'm generally comfortable with what's being proposed. I noted in the officers' comments, Joanne referenced the sudden flurry of funding that has become available, largely through central government, but also through other philanthropic trusts. We're in a very unusual environment where funding does seem to be flowing, and it seems to be getting to the places that need it the most. So I think it's the right thing that council comes in behind that and offers access to this fund. But I also know that our officers have extensive experience in working with our community groups. They have real experience of what the need is on the ground, and I trust them to make an informed decision as these applications come forward. And so I'm quite comfortable at having an uncapped fund at this stage, noting as well that the funding cap was given as an example of $5,000. There was no rationale behind what a funding cap might or might not need to be. We actually just don't know at this stage. There's no evidence of chronic need. There's anecdotal, what we call it anecdata evidence, that there is some need that hasn't been swept up already in other funds. So I'm actually comfortable with the recommendations as proposed and will support those in the report. Thank you.
I'll just invite the General Manager to make a comment about a possible cap and where that might be set.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I think the conversation has been really useful and probably reflects some of the conversations we've had, and these are the points that we've debated internally quite a lot to come to our recommendation. And I think the point was, and I think it was made by Jo when she spoke to the paper, is that we just don't know, and the thing that would, I suppose initially I was very much, let's, lock it down a little bit more, have, less, not have it open to multiple applications. But the issue you have is that we don't know what we're going to get. So if we end up saying, well, we can only give you 5,000, if that's the thing that could have actually saved an organisation, if it was 7,000, then we'd like to be in the position to be able to support that. The other thing that I suppose we've talked around a little bit, it's hard to be definitive about, is that we think this is not the only thing out there, right? So there is the big funding that was announced in the weekend. Now, I'm not saying that the City Council would put more money in, but there are other organisations who are looking at what we're doing and saying, we like what you're doing there, let's have a look at that, and we might be able to be in a position to support you if your money runs out. So if we closed it down and to eke it out a little bit, we might miss an opportunity as well. Now, I can't say that's what's going to happen, but all I'm wanting to do is to make sure you understand the thought process we've gone through to try and make this recommendation. So that was sort of where we landed with it. But over to you in terms of that, because it could go either way.
Thank you. I'd just like to make a comment. The first comment is following on from Councillor Bowen's comments. I was very pleased with the report. I particularly liked the options, the pros and cons, which stepped us through the thinking, and it certainly brought up some decision points for me that I hadn't previously considered. So I thought it was an excellent paper, and I think that officers who've worked on it should be commended. I can see both sides for the cap. I think where I'm going to fall on this is that I probably will prefer to leave it open, and noting that recommendation 2 would mean that if officers felt that we were getting a number of large applications, they could come back to council to make a change. In terms of whether or not we engage any third party to do this distribution, I'm not in favour of that at the moment, because I feel that this needs to be a rapid response fund. I think the staff have the good knowledge through the work that they've done with community groups and the community development team to understand local organisations and to react quickly. And so I would be in favour of making this an internal process. That doesn't make it political, because staff are making the decisions. We're just determining how the pot, what the rules are for distributing the pot. Any further comment? Councillor Barrett.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, and certainly echo those comments as well around the quality of the report, and really just appreciate that. An interesting point raised around the whether we go with the cap or not, and I suppose my view on it would be that there are so many organizations out there that it would be nice to have some assurance that it was more likely to be spread a bit more broadly in the community and not just end up in a few of the larger pockets. It's not to say that those larger pockets don't have legitimate need, but we as a council, I think, have a duty across the community and across a number of organizations. And one way to ensure that is to make a decision today that supports that outcome. As a person who in science has made a living off of writing grants for the last 20 years as well, I always find it a little bit frustrating when you don't actually get a bit of a steer from the granting agency. And currently the only steer we're giving them, it seems, is you can apply for $1 or you can apply for $200,000. And that tends to make it a little bit hard for the applicant to actually understand where to pitch. I don't think any one of us around this table wants to give $200,000 to one organization. And I think it would be very unlikely that staff would do that. But we're actually not giving a good, clear signal to the community groups around this is sort of the range that we're thinking in. And as long as we pair a cap with the ability to come in again and apply multiple times, an organization could actually still pull down 10% of this fund through 4 applications with that cap, which would actually be a reasonable scope for that organization to support their activity. So I'm strongly of the view that actually giving some guidance out to the community will be much more effective and help those applying to understand where to target themselves, and also give us some assurance that this will be spread at a reasonable level through the community. So I'd urge colleagues to vote in favor of a cap.
Councillor Dingwall, would you like to put up your, is it amendment or an additional recommendation?
It's an amendment. So I would like to move that we amend clause 1 to add the approved subject to an addition to the guidelines of a funding cap of 5,000, because it's not actually in the guidelines.
Yeah, thank you. Did you get that? Okay. If you could take that up to the administrator. I think we'd already had an indication of seconding from Councillor Naylor, to be fair, Councillor. Just while the administrator is typing that up, I think the GM would just like to make a comment about that amendment.
Just to clarify, and I think it's what you're meaning about per application on the end of it, so that so you can apply for 5,000 per application, and then just to be clear, you can come back for another crack. Great, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rutherford, are you speaking to the amendment? Okay, we'll just get you to wait because I need to get the mover to speak to it first. Councillor Dingwall, would you like to speak to your amendment?
No, I think we've covered it all. Essentially, We want more organisations to be able to access this fund, and this is the way that we do that.
Thank you. Councillor Rutherford.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just speaking on the amendment, when the idea was first floated, I was not in support of the concept. I thought it was too limiting. Councillor Barrett's made some very good points around giving guidance when applying for funds, and so that moved my position to be in support. And then hearing that the cap was $5,000, I'm now going to oppose that. So I have done a full circle, possibly twice over. I think what I really heard quite clearly from officers around the guidelines, and what I recall from our discussion around establishing this fund, was really, as the officer put it, as an emergency fund, to view it as an emergency fund. And if an organisation is really in a position where they're needing to access an emergency fund, $5,000 is not going to make a difference. If anything, it's going to make that death even a little bit more painful, because it's just dragging things out. So if we were to limit the support to $5,000, and I appreciate that they can have multiple bites, but if an organisation is in a position where they are really, really needing assistance, then it seems a little degrading to tell them that they can apply for $5,000 at a time from a fund, and they can take multiple bites at that. And when really they may actually need a cash injection of $25,000, and that could have been given in one hit. So I support the concept of a cap. I support the idea that we would be ensuring that there would be multiple groups that would be supported by this fund, but I do not support it limited to $5,000. I think that could potentially do more harm than good for groups that are really needing financial assistance. So I'm going to oppose the amendment. That is my final position. No, sorry, I take that back. I may change my mind depending on what other people say, but my current position is that I am going to oppose. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rutherford. Anyone else wishing to speak to the amendment? Councillor Naylor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just in terms of, to provide a bit more context to this this amendment, and in the light of the comments that have been just made, I think it's really important that we remember that community groups shouldn't be solely reliant on PNCC for all of their funding. We've heard today that there are some other funds for emergency funding, and in light of COVID, that community groups can access. I think it wouldn't be a healthy position if the sustainability of a group was solely dependent on PNCC, and for that reason, I think it's a reasonable response for us to provide a limit on the funding for each application.
Thank you. Councillor Hancock.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I'm going to be very, very brief, actually. Look, I actually do appreciate the sentiment that sort of underlies the cap and the need to actually spread the potential recipients of the fund. However, $5,000 is not really a meaningful amount, so therefore I'd actually oppose that. Thank you.
Councillor Bowen.
Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor. It's Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to briefly comment, noting the movers in speaking to the amendment said the intention of it was to allow more organisations to access the fund. I am actually oppose that position. I think the intention of the fund is to enable the right organisations, the organisations with the greatest need, to access the fund, and the way to do that is to give officers the flexibility to be able to direct funding to the place of greatest need, and so I'll oppose the funding cap. Thank you.
Councillor Finlay.
Yeah, I will actually support this for two reasons, actually. If you have a look at the Community Services Council small grants, now they have a cap of 5,000, but if you have a look at the figures that they're giving out, the people that have applied for 5,000, none of them are getting the 5,000 because there wasn't enough money there for it. So I would like to see, and I know a lot of community groups are actually suffering because of COVID for lots of different reasons. I would like to see each each of our community groups that have suffered because of COVID be given a fair chance to get something. If we get 2 or 3 of the octopuses or the big ones coming in, and they could swallow up $200,000 so quickly it wouldn't be funny. And the little ones, the little groups that do so much good in this community will miss out. So I'm quite happy seeing it as an organisation to be able to apply for $5,000 4 times. That's fine. But let's have a limit of $5,000 so everybody who needs the help can actually access that help. It's not just the big ones that we all know about. There's the little ones that have suffered dramatically. Let's give them a fair chance as well.
Councillor Beattie.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have to speak. If you divide 5K into 200,000, there's only 40 organisations. So if you have 3 or 4 come in on the first application, and you've got one who's got 50K and another that's got 20K or something, you've done your whole dash. And we're actually going to be we've got to be careful as a council that the fund is not overcommitted in the first quarter, because as yet I hear one quarter saying, well, there's massive need out there. Some say, well, government stepped in. I don't know what I don't know. So I think we should just be cautious. Let's just cap it at 5K to start off with. If we don't get applications and there's other organisations out there that need more funding, we can come back. So I'm going to support the amendment.
Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I explained my rationale before in terms of my thinking at that stage, but it has been a really good discussion. And just to signal that I'm still supportive of the amendments there, but I would just want to foreshadow a notice of motion that if it fails, I'd like to test the $20,000 as a cap.
Thank you. Right. If there's no further comment, we will vote on the amendment. So that's the just the item in blue. I'll just take advice from it. Yeah. So we're just voting on the amendment, which is that subject to an addition to the guidelines of a funding cap of $5,000 per application. So I think we might do this by division, since I'm always the one that calls for one. I thought I'd jump in quickly before you'd ordered it to me. So I will ask governance to call a division for the voting, please.
On the amendment, Councillor Naylor?
4.
4. Councillor Dingwall?
4.
4. Councillor Beattie?
4.
4. Councillor Meehan?
4.
4. Councillor Hapeta?
Against.
Against. Deputy Mayor Utikere?
4.
4. Councillor Hancock?
Against.
Against. Councillor Rutherford?
Against.
Against. Councillor Bowen? Against. Danielle Harris? Against. Councillor Barrett?
4.
4. Councillor Petrinas?
4.
4. Councillor Finlay?
4.
4. Councillor Dennison?
4.
4. Mayor Smith?
4.
4. Councillor Johnson?
Against.
Against. Councillor Butt?
4.
4.
So that is carried, 11 votes for and 6 against. So now that becomes the substantive, we can take, is everyone happy if we take recommendations 1 and 2 together? I'm still happy to move them. Are you still happy to second, Councillor Bowen? We just need to get that, yeah. No, I don't. Would anyone like this to be done by division? Okay, I will do a vote on voices then. So we're voting on recommendations 1 and 2 as amended. All those in favour say aye. Anyone against? Any abstentions? Okay, that's carried unanimously. Thank you. Yes, I think it might be. And let's adjourn for morning tea for 15 minutes and we will come back at 10:45 for item 9. Thank you.